And then like I wrote one of the best songs I've ever written, and then I gave it to like with an artist, co-wrote it with them, and then their mother didn't like it, and it didn't get released. And I was like, okay, screw this. Like I'm not leaving like you give everything, and then it doesn't. Some weird reason can be the reason it doesn't come out. I wanted more control of what I was doing.
Hey, Dean, how are you?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, thank you for taking the time.
Of course, I'm a big fan. I appreciate your time today. I'm Adam, and this is a podcast about you and your journey in music.
Great, man. No, thank you very much.
Awesome. And dude, I love of course, the TikTok video is it hits deep for me. My father-in-law, my wife's dad, was diagnosed with cancer a couple years ago, and he's been in remission since. So just seeing that video,
wow, great.
Yeah.
Well, happy to hear he's in remission, just like my dad. Yeah, super happy to hear he's in remission.
Okay, I was going to ask you, I did see the video that you got to play the song with him on stage, and I want to talk to you about that because that was like pretty emotional to watch too, man.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about it now? Are we on?
Oh, yeah, we're going. So
okay, sweet. I love it. Oh, I love it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so basically, obviously wrote the song about my dad, and then I was in Sydney, and I was like, because my dad taught me how to play guitar. He's
cool.
Not great at guitar, but he's a chord player like me. We're both kind of similar. And so I was like, do you want to come on stage and play with me? And he said no, and then he said yes. And then we came on stage, and he wasn't nervous at all, and he had a great time. And the fans, no one knew he was going to be there, and we filmed it. So it was just a really special moment.
That's so special. And that's amazing. Really You're able to capture that and everything. I did see just in the caption of that video, you talk about how it was your dad's dream to play with you on stage, even before he taught you how to play guitar, even before you even got a guitar. Was that like with your first instrument, was guitar your first instrument? Did he, kind of put you towards that?
Yeah. So my dad, sorry, I haven't talked about this stuff a lot, but my dad, he's always played guitar, and he loved the Beatles. And so he had all these guitars when we were really young, like under 10, and he would he'd bring out these guitars, and he'd be like to one of my brothers, this is going to be yours one day, this is going to be yours, and my older brother is going to be yours. And I always want to look at these guitars, and it always had this magical quality about them, because he had these kind of rare electric guitars. And then he got me guitar lessons, but it was kind of like, when you sort of get forced into something, and he kind of forced me into guitar lessons. I just like to look at it. I didn't want to actually do any work, as a kid. So I got guitar lessons and I learned the basics, but I never wanted to do it, and I just was like, whatever. But I'm glad he did. But and then I think I was 18. I turned 18, and I said to Dad, "Oh, like, okay, can you get me a guitar for my birthday?" Because as every musician, I mean, probably not everyone, but I'd say most, you have that moment where you go, no, I decide to do this, because it's got to be you. It can't be someone putting it on you.
Sure.
And then he got me a guitar, and I started writing songs really quickly, and that's how it happened. But I was really just guitar. I mean, even the way that I play piano now, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, I am all about simplicity. So even with guitar, like I use a capo. I never wanted to actually learn any bar chords or anything. I wanted to keep it simple. So I learned the basics and use a capo. And when I play keyboard on stage, I actually transpose. So I keep the chord shapes all really similar. But that goes back to a philosophy on simplicity, and not really knowing what I'm doing, but knowing how to do it knowing how to do it if I need to. But that's another story.
Wow. Okay. So you didn't even start really playing or writing songs until you were 18 years old?
I started late, but I was obsessed. Wow. So when I was younger, like, I mean, even in my teens, I would watch YouTube. Like, I was obsessed with watching Oasis. Like, I mean, every day I'd come home from school and I'd watch Noel play acoustic guitar, and I'd watch like the Kooks. I think it was the Kooks were playing, a big English band.
Oh yeah,
and I just watched
the Kooks.
I knew all the B-sides. I watched every performance over and over again, and I was excited. It was like I was learning these melodies, and I was learning it and taking it in. But I didn't really pick up a guitar until a few years later, when I was 18, when I really was like, oh, maybe I can give this a crack. So I wasn't really. I started a little bit later than most, I'd think, but I'd had the history of learning how to play, and I'd had the years of just melodies and being so obsessed with watching that it was sort of in my brain a little bit, I think.
I think it's fascinating. You kind of watching Noel, right? I mean, if
Yeah,
as far
no,
as Oasis goes, I mean,
yeah,
he's the songwriter and the guitar player, but instead of being kind of fixated on what Liam's doing as like the front man guy, it was like
yeah.
you were kind of watching what the guy that wrote the songs and the melodies was doing.
Exactly. I mean, I what I loved with Noel, and that's the obviously who I used to watch, was he basically played the same chords. He just sussed the chords or whatever, and he just like moved one finger. And I was like, it was so simple. And he would even do multiple songs that had the exact same chords. And I was like, my actual thought back then when I started playing properly, I was like, okay, if one human can write 100 songs that are incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can write one of them as good as his worst one. Like that was where I was my starting point. I was like, there's no way like Oasis's worst song, I can't write a song as good as like the worst. Like if I really applied myself. So it was kind of just like that was my mentality at the start. And I've been big in this when I write songs, even to this day. Like if I write a song, sometimes I'll pick up my guitar and I'll play it on acoustic guitar, and then I'll play a James Bay song or like or like a Frey song or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or even Ed Sheeran or whoever the songwriter is, and I'll be like, oh, and straight away because you strip away all the production, or they're using fancy producers,
Mm-hmm.
but if you play it and you record it I record it on my like a voice memo, and I listen back and I'd be like, all right, well, side by side, these sound like they're pretty much similar quality, and that's been a real thing that I do because when you're a new singer songwriter and you play a song on guitar and then you listen to like a fully produced guy who writes hits or
Mm-hmm.
like the Frey or Ed Sheeran, you're not it's disheartening and you kind of go, oh, I'm not as good. But if you play it on guitar next to each other side by side, and they sound about the same, well then it's possible. And I always thought this. I was like, well, if he can make it sound like that, and it sounds like this when I play it on guitar, well then when I play mine on guitar, I can make it sound as good as that. And then for me, it was a big. I've always thought that. So when I would go to producers, I would go in and it wouldn't be as good. And I'd be like, well, then I just do it again. And I've done this throughout my whole career. I was like, if it's not as good, sometimes songs just aren't as good, but sometimes it's just the production. And, yeah, it's like it can be as good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a really interesting
Yeah.
philosophy. I've never heard anyone talk about it like that, but you're right, right? I mean, if you strip back all of the production and all the things and the bells and the whistles, and it's just the guitar
Yeah.
and the voice, and you set yours next to
Yeah.
it, if they could be equivalent, even if you're a young singer-songwriter. It's like, well, this has some legs. Let's, keep running with this.
Exactly. You need that. You need that at the start because yeah, you can. It's so disheartening to hear what great people do, and also the first producers most artists work with at the start. The level's not there. You know what I mean? And you also
Mhm.
don't know who you are. But I think it's a really good calibration. Do you know what I mean? Of when you do that on the guitar, and yeah, it's a good calibration.
Mhm. When you started writing or when you started playing at 18, was what kind of sparked that? Do you remember? Like what were you thinking you were going to be doing prior to that? Like, did you
Yeah.
have an idea of doing something totally different than music?
It's funny. Yeah, yeah. I think I don't really take it that seriously. I was just obsessed with it. It just kind of hit. You get to that natural point where you watch so much that you go, oh, I may as well just try this. And I'd already learned, like the basics when I was like 12. And then,
Mhm.
obviously with a few years, um, it was probably a little bit to be good at something. Like, I think every person in the world, you want to be good at something and you want to be great and you want to prove that you have a voice. And I was like, all right, well, I picked up a guitar at 18 and the first song I wrote, I remember I showed my mom and my mom was like, she was like, oh, that's good, darling. But I knew it was like, actually, it wasn't horrible. And I was like, oh, it came really easily. And then, when you do something and you're good at something right away, you got that little spark.
Mhm.
And not great, not great. But some people pick up a ball and they just are really good at basketball, or they're really good at you know, they're really good at math. Like maybe some people they just have a little 10% spark at it. That's
Mhm.
that's better than most people. And it was just quite easy. It was easy when I started doing it. It just came really easily and naturally. And then that's exciting because I'm good at something, and I'm like, oh, then I can progress. And really, songwriting is, I mean, it's really at the start it's kind of simple because the whole world's your oyster, and you have all these masters have laid out how to write songs and the chords are all the same basically, like usually it's four chords in different, like 80% of songs like that in different progressions.
Mhm.
And it's like everything seems really possible. And it's not like writing a book where you have to write, like, a song is almost like a page from a book. Like it's kind of like you can also get away with saying really things that don't really mean anything. I mean, you can do that. Not that I try to make everything great and I really think about what I'm doing. But
Mhm.
sometimes when the first songs I ever wrote, some of them are like, I didn't really know what I was doing, and the line was sort of didn't really make any sense. But like, you play it at a show and everyone's singing it back to you, and some people are crying, and you realize people interpret it in different ways. And so it's yeah, and there's levels to that. Like, obviously after a certain amount of time, you realize how important lyrics are,
Yeah.
and how difficult it is, and how lucky you are sometimes to strike gold. But when you start, you're so like naive to everything, and there's so much greatness gets created from that naivety, I think.
Mm-hmm. With that, like, I mean, writing that song and showing it to your mom, like, kind of knowing, like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good at this. Like you said,
Yeah,
I'm 10% better at this than most people that would just start off, right?
yeah.
Like, at what point are you? You said you're obsessed with this, so you write the song, and then is it like, how do you kind of start from that point? Is it like, do you start showing your friends your
Yes,
songs, or you're like, "Ah, I'm
yes.
just gonna throw it up on YouTube," or like where does it all kind of begin?
Oh my God, yeah. So I would send my brother Sean has always been like my best like person to show stuff to. Like, so I would always show him the songs, and he's always so encouraging. He was always like, "Oh, this is great." And this is my brother. Like, we would tear into each other, and
Right.
we're so competitive. But he was always like, "You're really good at this." And over time, I would start sending it to like girls that I was talking to, and the songs were pretty awful, but like there was a bit of spark there, and no one really cared that much. Like, but then over time, you just start getting better and better. And what I did was I paid like 10 grand of my own money. Like, I worked, saved up 10 grand, and I worked with a producer in Australia. And most of the stuff was really bad, because when you first start out, you're either copying, because when you start anything, you're just copying, right? That's how you
Hmm.
get good at something. You have to learn from the masters before and so you're doing that, and then and you don't really know what works. You don't have your own voice yet. I didn't understand my voice. I didn't really know how to use it. I didn't understand emotion, my range, and you're all simulating sort of different. I was sort of emulating Luke from the Kooks, where he had this kind of like, I'm not saying it was your fault. Like, kind of, it was kind of embarrassing. But I worked with this producer, and I did a bunch of songs, and then I did one song that was like pretty good. And I listened back to it, and the producer said, "This song's going to open doors for you." And I knew out of all these songs, I recorded like five, there was one good one in there. And I remember the moment that it all changed for me, actually. I went in to do an open mic night in Australia. It was I didn't really start doing any gigs. I started doing open mic nights, just my guitar at a pub.
Hmm.
And I went in there and I played, like, there was like 10 people, like, you wait for your turn. And I went in there and I played that song that the producer said was the one that was going to open doors. And it was my best song at the time. And I played it, and everyone went quiet. And the girl who was serving at the bar stopped serving and turned around and watched. And no one did that for anyone else. I was like, that's interesting. And I'm shaking up there. Like, I'm nervous as hell. This is a terrifying experience to show your art and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And so that kind of encouraged me. And then I sent a demo out. I sent that song out with a bunch of demos to 30 managers, and I think no one got back to me. One person got back to me and said, "Do you have any more music?" And I didn't, so I just didn't reply. And that was the end of that. And then I thought, all right, well, look, I'm a probabilities guy. I was like, I sent my best work out to these managers. No one replied, apart from one who I had nothing. I was like, it was like there's no future in this. So I kind of was like, maybe I'll just do it as a hobby. And I put that
Hmm.
song online. I think it got like 30,000 views on YouTube, and like
Wow.
did nothing. It was just like, I ended up deleting that song
I was gonna ask
because it
you
wasn't
if that song's not, it didn't make a record or anything.
it. Yeah, because it was very like, it's a bit cheesy, like, because now that song I wouldn't even put in my cat. It's not even in the ballpark of even close. But back then,
Okay.
your best song is, it'll become nothing in time, because I learned so much between now and then. But what
Sure.
actually happened was, my best mate, it sounds like a lie, this story is so crazy, but my best mate, who works in radio, um, was on a boat cruise and passed that song on to my now manager. Um, and she heard the song back then. She was drunk on a boat, she told me, and she was on the taxi home and she was listening to that song and she was like, oh my God. And she had this publishing company. So publishing people are like, people who don't know, you start as you can be an artist or you can sign publishing to be a songwriter. Essentially, I mean, it's more complicated than that. But she signed me as a songwriter to write songs for other people for $0. It was my lawyer said it was like the worst deal ever. But I was like 20. At this point, I was 26. Like it was a long time. I was working a normal job, and I thought I'd missed it. I was like, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to give them a percentage of my songs for $0. But in my head, I knew it was the best deal I was ever going to do because I trusted her. They were good people and they'd had a big track record. And so I gave up a lot of stuff for nothing. And it ended up being the best choice I'd ever made because through them, she managed me, got me record deals. She, all these things started falling into place because of that. And it is important. I think it's less important now because it's a different world with TikTok. I mean, with labels and all that stuff, it's a very complicated discussion. But if you wanted to get into that label world, you do sort of need that. You need someone to vouch for you, kind of thing. If you don't have that hype, you need someone to go, "Oh, I believe in you," and that's rarer and rarer nowadays. But yeah, she was the person who believed in me, and then I went to the UK and wrote Waves, and that's the start of that kind of stuff happening.
Okay, so you were able to obtain the manager prior to Waves even being a thing. Wow.
Yeah, I got the manager and publishing. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's cool. I come from radio. I did radio for 17 years, so that's awesome that your best friend did radio too. I think that's cool.
Yeah, he still does it. He's a legend. He was trying to pass my songs on to the music director there back then, but they weren't. He didn't tell me that they didn't like it, but then things worked out in the end.
Well, there's so much red tape when it comes to it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, there is. There really is. It really is.
But that's cool though. So then you get this deal. Then you said you went to the UK, and that's when you wrote Waves. That was one of the songs, so I wrote, and then obviously that one becomes a massive hit.
Became huge. It was weird. I wrote Waves. I'd already written Be Alright actually.
Oh wow.
So this is weird. I'd already written Be Alright. Excuse me, but I was kind of on this weird run about like being a writer. I was like, I'm going to write for other people. I want to do this. And then I wrote one of the best songs I've ever written, and then I gave it to with an artist, co-wrote it with them, and then their mother didn't like it, and it didn't get released. And I was like, okay, screw this. I'm not leaving you give everything, and then it doesn't. Some weird reason can be the reason it doesn't come out. I wanted more control of what I was doing.
Right. So was his mom run a major label or something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, it was just but opinions kill art, right? It's crazy. So I'd written Be Alright, and but it was kind of like on the side. And then I went to the UK and I wrote Waves. And then when I got back from the UK, I started showcasing for these record labels. I played for every major label in Australia. And it was hard for me to even get a showcase. I was playing Waves. I was playing my song Half a Man. I was playing Be Alright. And they'd be in there and they'd kind of be like, oh, that's great. And they'd be like, we don't really have a place for you. It just for whatever reason, they didn't want to sign me. And I was like, okay, well, I swear these songs are good. And then the last label, the very last major in Australia, signed me. They basically were like, one A&R guy there called Mike Taylor, who was a legend. He heard the song Be Alright, and he goes, I wasn't going to sign anyone this year until they had the song, and I believe you had the song. And so he signed me, and then I went to I went to America. We got signed because when you're in Australia, it's really hard to get out of this little bubble. There's a few Australian artists that have done well, right? Like Five Sauce and Sia, but it's really rare. Vance Joy's done great, but it's so small and so hard to do. But I immediately went overseas to try to pick up the labels in America, and then we put Waves out, and then it did nothing for the first 2 months. I think it was 5,000 views on YouTube. It was
wow.
I remember being like, oh man, this isn't my best. I thought it was my best song. I knew I had Be Alright, but Be Alright wasn't done yet. it was in the wrong key, that it was a demo, and I hadn't figured out my voice yet. So I needed some time, but we all knew that Be Alright was the hit. All of us, it was a weird thing where, I've never had this since. I've never had this apart from that one time where everyone at every label thinks that a song is a hit, and it actually is. Ever since Be Alright, every song I'm going to release, I have the label in Germany saying it's not the right one, we want this one, and you have America saying we want this one. It's all split, you know what I mean, between.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting thing. But yeah, I put Waves out, then it got synced in a show called Riverdale.
Oh yeah, that's a
The
massive show.
massive show, and it was the mid-season finale, so it got on a great moment, and then it went like huge. Like it went, well, for me it was huge. It went like, you know, a million views in a week. It was like, what the hell? And then I'm getting offers from like going to Germany. I'm getting on German radio, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And then yeah, and then I put out Be Right, and then that just went to another level. Basically, it just went crazy.
Wow. Was that kind of hard to, I mean, obviously you were working at it for a long time and working your ass off, but then to see something like the two songs that you knew were good, right? Like Waves, it does something. You're like, oh my gosh. And then Be All Right, the one that you knew also from the start that was that
Yeah,
should have been a hit or was gonna be a hit.
yeah.
Like was it hard to kind of absorb everything, or was it moving pretty quick? Were you like, oh my, like were you able to kind of take it in, or was it just moving so fast at that
Yeah,
point?
it moves so fast. It is crazy because, you know, I moved in with my grandma, right? Like I was living with my nan for a year. I had no money. I was actually going to go. I don't talk about this. I was my previous job. I was so bad with my money that I was actually considering going bankrupt. Like I actually went into possibly go because I had all this tax I had to pay. Like I was so stressed. I had, you know, I was living with nan to save money, and then it just blew up. And I'm like, oh my god, my life's changing. I don't have to go bankrupt anymore, and I'm traveling across America. All my shows are selling out, and I'm selling out everywhere all around the world, and I'm getting taken to different countries. And it was a real crazy thing because it was like Waves was a big song, but it was not. There's so many levels to this stuff, is what I realized. Like you can have a hit, but you can have like an evergreen, and it was enormous. Like it was just the streams went crazy, and the shows were selling out, and there was a lot of pressure. But you have this thing where you sort of start to think that every song's going to be a hit. Like you sort of start to think, um, yeah, every song's a hit, and this is the way it is. Like, and then things get a bit interesting because, you know, I never really got the ego because I started quite late. I was 26 when I got signed, or 27. I was like, you know, I'd lived a life of like a normal guy, you know, so.
Right.
So I didn't start to think I was the man. But I started to think, all right, well, oh, everything I put out's great. All right. So I think I did make some mistakes after Be Right, in the sense that the songs I put out, although I love every song I put out, I think that it's good, but I don't think I had the follow up. But I thought I did because everything I was putting out was doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of lessons in that, and something that I'm actually trying. I think about right now as I have another song that's done really well. The follow up is so important, and
Mm-hmm.
you learn those lessons, and sometimes you never have another chance to do it right. But I think yeah, that's where my head's at right now, actually. But
Well,
I put out some other song, yeah.
I was gonna say, but
Yes,
you were able to do that going into like, yeah, the hardest love. It was probably similar to what you were thinking. Like, okay, well, I just had this album that was awesome. Are we gonna be able to, continue the
yeah,
uptick? And then obviously with how do I say goodbye? It just went again,
it went crazy. Yeah, but in between that, there was COVID. So you know,
which
I
was
was lucky because, you know, when I finished that first album with Be Alright blowing up, I toured the world, and then as I went to take 6 months off, that's when COVID hit. So it kind of extended it, you know. So there's a lot of artists that had a big song 2 years ago that couldn't tour. They didn't, like, they had a hit song and they never heard a crowd sing it back to them. And so
right.
I
I
was
was
lucky to
wondering if
have all of
Lizzo
that.
was gonna have that, to be honest, because I'm like,
Oh
she
my
had
God, yeah.
she had those that I mean, Truth Hurts was like the peak, and then it was like everything shut down. I'm like, is she gonna
Yeah.
be able to have a
Well,
career off this? Obviously,
yeah, that's
she
so
did.
true. Yeah, she did. She's crushing. You're right though, but that's, you know, it was a weird time, and so not releasing music, you know, like, um, I didn't release a lot of music. I think everyone was trying to wait for it to end, like, and I don't know if you remember, but everyone was always like, it's 2 months away, it's gonna be
Two
over, and it
weeks.
just
Yeah.
two and a
Flatten the
half years
curve,
later,
Dean. Flatten the
yeah,
curve.
flatten the curve, and so when I put out, I put out a couple of songs from the new album, and excuse me, they weren't really doing that well, like. I just come off a song that had a couple of billion streams, and the songs were like, you know, they were kind of getting like 100 million across everything, which is incredible. But like, I think when you have these different estimates, and you start hearing things about like, I had conversations, they're saying, oh, we can't spend as much money on your stuff anymore. Like, you also start to notice people who were there when you're hot, they're gone. They're gone now.
Mhm.
Like, no one's returning the calls, literally. Like, but you have these people, you realize who are your real crew and who are your real friends. My manager stayed and all these people, but it was definitely a hard time. And And it was, so things just not working. And then How Do I Say Goodbye comes out. And I knew that was my best song because when I wrote the song, I I got really emotional listening to it. And I was like, when I'm writing songs, I'm so analytical about it. Like I'm constantly stressing, is it good enough? How can I make it better? And so the emotion of the song doesn't really hit me until later. But I heard the chorus back the first time I wrote it, and I was like crying. Like, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
so not like me. I was like, what the hell's going on? You know, because it was such a, it was so overwhelming. And I was like, all right, if that's making me cry, that's gonna make. I just knew, I knew what it was gonna do. Weirdly, yeah, the only two times I knew a song was going to connect was that and Be Alright. But you still, after the songs hadn't connected and nothing was working, I was like, oh, I don't know anymore. You know, is this, have I missed my moment? You know, was that the moment? And it's all gone past. And then put How Do I Say Goodbye out. I started doing well. And then I posted a video of my dad. My brother filmed my dad listening to it for the first time on TikTok.
Mhm.
And it got 40 million views in like a week. And then it went from like 500,000 streams a day to like 1.2 in 24 hours, and it got into the global 200. And I'm like, oh, because you know I'm pre TikTok or my success, and
Right.
so I was a big learning curve of going, all right, well, you know, you're posting every day, and I really think about it, man. Like you got to think about it with TikTok now. It's so many artists I talk to are so burnt out from it, but like I really thought about it, and I think that if you think about it and you try, you can still have success. And it is a great tool because there's less gatekeepers. Because How Do I Say Goodbye blew up without any gatekeepers. Like no one supported that song out of the gates. It was like just out. And then like the modern world now is you make it happen. You got to make
Hmm.
it happen. That's what my label said. Like they were like, all right, we got to get a trend. You got to get a trend going. You know, and we got a trend going. And then all of a sudden you get the fuel poured on it, which is great. And you need that. Um, but it's a tough world out there now, man. It is much more. It's much more do it yourself, make it happen, and then if you're lucky, then you get the support, and the
Right.
fuel put upon it. It's very different now.
Well, yeah, because now everything can be literally analyzed, and do people care yet? Like it's like with especially with TikTok, it's almost like an open focus group, right? It's like,
Yeah,
does anyone care
exactly,
yet?
exactly,
Oh, okay, now people care.
exactly.
But I feel like with, I mean, how do I say goodbye is such an amazing song, but such a personal song to you, and but it touches so many other people. Like I said earlier, like my father and I had cancer, and I'm like, wow, like it just brings all those emotions right back. And but with TikTok too, I feel like the things that work are the things that are authentic, and you could tell how
Yeah.
authentic the song is, and then just the reaction of your dad on that thing is just like heartbreaking because
Yes.
he's here, it's the whole emotion of everything is just so like it just captures people, and especially people that have the millions upon millions of people that have had that similar situation, having
Yeah, and we
received.
all will, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I think you said in one of your posts or something about, you were kind of even worried, not worried, but like, what should I put this song out because it is so personal?
Yeah, I was worried about that, but one thing I learned really early on, I put a song out called Half a Man, which had a line in there, which was, "How am I supposed to love you when I don't love who I am?" And I remember when I put that song out, I was like, "Oh my God, is this too much to say? Like, how can I even say this?" Like, I was just kind of, it was very open and emotional and vulnerable, and people loved it. So now when I have something that's emotional and vulnerable and authentic, and all the songs that are connected for me, I've got five of them that have connected in a big way. They've all been really genuinely authentic.
Mhm.
The problem now is, you even said it before, like if it TikTok is a focus group, but it's really a focus group of who's the best marketer. You know what I mean? Because and it's like it's tough because it's not, you can write the best song in the world. Like I could write Be Alright today and it never came out, and I released it today, and if it didn't catch a trend, people would actually say, "Oh, we've got to move on to the next one. What's the next song? What do you got?" And it's like, that is insane to me. That's
Mhm.
crazy. But on the other hand, you can actually have an exponential growth of a song and a fan base overnight if you think about it just as much. So it's a different time, but you just have to embrace the way that it is at the time. Maybe in a year's time, everyone will like, it'll equal out a bit, and there'll be like TikTok trend songs and songs that are just really good, that can just be, that can grow without that on their own merit. But I just think right now, the rules of where we are as artists and how we have to get our songs out there is you make it happen on TikTok or the song is dead. That's the way.
Yeah.
That's the way that it's sold to you now, and it kind of is the truth, and it's terrifying and exciting at the same time. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I have been out of radio for a few years now, like since kind of the beginning of the pandemic. But it's interesting to see, and like, because I still have a lot of friends that work and they program stations, and what they're putting into now, they're adding to their playlists are like all songs that have already done something right on TikTok. Like now,
yes,
it's like the people are taking like the trend, the viral songs, and it's like, okay, well now I guess we can play it on the radio because 18 million other people have already like gave a
exactly,
cosign to
exactly.
it. It's like I feel like radio is always a little late to the party, and
Yeah,
now they're
but that's
using that
interesting.
as like a way to kind of grab songs.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. And you know, and I'm someone who's benefited from that recently with How to Say Goodbye being so big on TikTok. But you know, you scale the mountain, right? Once. And then you
Right.
go when you get and then when the song sort of does its thing, it's terrifying to look out and go, oh, there's another one. And you go, wait, how do like that was almost like lightning striking in every facet of the song, the timing, how it blew up, and then going, oh, you got to do that again. And I think even there was I think even Ed Sheeran said this now, like the playing field's been so leveled now. It's not like you see huge artists that have 50 million monthly listeners putting a song out that just doesn't work. And I think we've never seen that. We've never seen that before. Like everyone has to. It sort of leveled it, and it also means that like an artist who's brand new can finally just put a song out and it can blow up. And I think so. It's leveling the playing field, but making it incredibly stressful for everyone. So that's how it
100%.
feels, you know.
Yeah, because I'm sure a lot of massive artists that have had have a huge following or monthly listeners or whatever assume like, oh well, I'm putting a song out, so I know every radio
Yeah,
station in the planet's going to start playing, and it's like, well, not if it's not
exactly.
a hit anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, I bet those people like. I mean, a part of me is like, oh man, like a part of me is like the old world is good in some ways and horrible in others because you go, it always was given a sort of, it was given it just was pushed through the gates a little bit, but now it's like the gates are kind of like open for anyone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also harder to get through them. Almost, I don't know. It's such a it's so even as I'm talking about it, it's so conflicting and confusing, and contradictory. So yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I love the new album and what you're doing, and you have this massive tour coming up too. I'm sure you're pretty excited about that.
Yes, very excited. Like, I can't believe it, man. Like, yeah, like the tours I'm doing, especially in Europe, it's like in Canada, the great shows, but like in Australia and Europe, I'm doing like arenas and, you know, they're selling out. And I've been wanting to get to this point my whole life. And I always wondered, as I saw so many other artists they go up and I was stalling and I was like, I feel like I'm here, man. And I feel great about it. And in America, I'm doing theaters and I think it's just such a difficult place to get through as an America. It's just so big, but I think I'm really excited about this tour, and I think it's going to sell out, the American one, which we're announcing soon. So I'm really excited about
Oh, amazing! I was gonna say I didn't see any U.S. dates on your
it. It's
tour.
coming. It's
You
coming
did.
really soon, actually.
I'm in Nashville now, but I'm originally from San Diego, and you played House of Blues, I believe, last time you came. At least when I
Oh,
saw you. Yeah,
so
with
we had to.
Billy Raffle.
Oh, was that Forest Black?
I think it
It
was
might have
at
been.
the
We
House of
had to
Blues.
cancel. We had to cancel. There was something. The only show we canceled in the last
Was
tour
was
was the Nashville one, but which
Oh
is
no, I'm
also
talking about
awful.
San Diego. It was in San Diego. It was before
Oh,
I
San
moved to
Diego. Okay,
Nashville.
sorry, we did San Diego. I think that was with Forest Black opening for me.
Okay.
It would have been Forest.
Oh, it was Forest Black. Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
I got it.
and that's right. And our drummer had COVID, I think, and we had to do it sole acoustic with a duo set. It was really that was a good show though. It was fun. But yeah. But I actually live in Nashville as well, technically. Now I got a place out there.
Oh, no way.
So in 12 South, yeah, I got a place there. I'm not really ever there. I sort of rent it out, but that's kind of where I'm based, I guess, if you could say I'm based anywhere.
Oh, that's
So
amazing. Well,
yeah, where
yeah,
do you live in Nashville?
I live down in by Franklin.
Oh, great, man. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
It's a great spot.
Yeah,
Franklin's
that's
badass.
cool that I didn't realize. I figured that you set up home base either in LA or Australia still in Sydney.
Yeah, you know how
Yeah.
it is. It's sort of like it's there, but I'm never there. You know what it's like.
Sure,
So
sure.
yeah.
That's awesome. Do you do a lot of songwriting here? I'm just curious
I do.
now.
Yeah, I wrote "How Do I Say Goodbye" in Nashville at my friend John Hume's house. He's a Kiwi. He's a New Zealander, and he lives in he's. I mean, he got me when I went and saw his house. I was like, this is incredible. Like this, what the hell is this place? And like it was just, it's so much. It's so exciting in Nashville. The feeling it's growing. I'm sure you've seen it grow Last few
So
years, it's just
yeah, I've only
it's
been here for 2
ballistic right
years,
now.
and it's insane to
Oh,
see
see,
the
you're
amount
like
of
me.
people.
You're like one of the we're hanger-oners of the Nashville trend.
Yeah, exactly. I'm one of the millions. Every time I told somebody I moved here, like, oh, another person from California. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But in a few years, we're gonna be like OGs, man. We're
You're
gonna be like
right,
the
exactly.
originals, you know? Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dean, for doing this, man. I appreciate it. I know you've had a busy day, and that's incredible. You're in Nashville. Maybe we can link up sometime when you're back in town. But I have
Yeah,
one more quick question for you before I let you go. I want to know if
yeah,
you have any advice for aspiring artists.
absolutely. Okay. So I was always quite good at this. I'm bad at a lot of things, but I was good at following this advice. But at times in my life, I have faltered a little bit on this, and I've recently rediscovered it. When you start out, people will tell you to do things and to go in certain directions that are against your natural instincts or what you want to do. I think it's really important to listen to people around you, and I'm really good on that. But you have to have a north pole you're heading in. You have to find your sound, and take some time before you find the song you want to put out. I took years before I put out my best song, Waves. Although with TikTok, you know, it's a bit different now. But my advice is this: it would be, don't fail on someone else's terms. People will look you in the eye who have very high powered jobs, high level jobs, and they will tell you what you should do, and you will fail on their terms. And if it doesn't work, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so let me start that again. Sorry. So
No, go
yeah,
ahead.
don't listen to everyone's going to give you certain opinions and what you should do, but if when it doesn't work, they won't be there, and they're never there to kind of. It'll just kind of end. They just kind of disappear. Follow your instincts and do what you want to do. And when you start having success in that, continue it, because people are always going to want to keep pushing you in different directions, and they don't know what they're doing. No one really knows what they're doing. Some people are good at things. Some people are like very good, but no one really knows all the answers. And fail on your own terms rather than failing on someone else's, because that's kind of hell. I don't think anyone, a lot of people do deal with it, but I don't think anyone wants to deal with. So find your own way in things, and don't just listen to everyone blindly. Take everyone's advice in, but you know, no one really knows. So that's what I would say.